You know, it's something you often see kids who excel in reading also seem to do pretty well in math, and vice versa. It
Yeah.
makes you wonder what's the connection there. Today on the deep dive, we're going to unpack exactly that.
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? Because, I mean, on the surface, reading words and, manipulating numbers seem like quite different skills.
Totally different.
So understanding why strengths in one often align with strengths in the other is, well, it's a real puzzle.
Absolutely. And to solve this puzzle, we're diving into a really powerful piece of research, a meta-analysis. It's titled, What is the Source of the Correlation Between Reading and Mathematics Achievement?
Ah, a meta-analysis. Good stuff.
Yeah, and this wasn't just like one study, looked at hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Hundreds, involving over 1 million
Well,
participants.
a million.
Their goal was to really pin down what's behind this link between reading and math abilities. And, well, here's a little teaser. They found a pretty compelling answer that might surprise you.
Hmm. A meta-analysis like this is incredibly valuable. It lets us see those overarching trends and really weigh the evidence across a huge amount of research. You get a much clearer picture than any single study could ever give you.
Right. So as these researchers were sifting through all that data, they were essentially looking at two main ideas, two main possibilities for why reading and math might be connected.
Yep.
The first is what they called overlapping skills. So these are the specific cognitive tasks that both reading and math might tap into.
Okay, like what specifically?
Well, think about needing to remember vocabulary when you're reading,
Uh-huh.
and maybe needing to recall math facts, like multiplication tables, when you're doing arithmetic.
Precisely. The idea there is that if you're good at certain mental processes,
Hmm.
things that are crucial for both reading and math, then you're likely to perform well in both subjects. It's
Well,
about shared mental tools, basically.
makes sense. Then the second idea they explored was domain general influences.
Domain general. Okay.
This is about those broader cognitive abilities, things that aren't specific to just reading or just math, but kind of support learning across all sorts of areas.
Right, like your ability to focus your attention.
Exactly. Attention, memory capacity, how quickly you can process information, that sort of thing.
Yeah, these domain general abilities are like the fundamental building blocks of cognition, aren't they?
Hmm.
If you have stronger attention control, for instance, that's likely going to help you stay focused reading a dense paragraph,
Hmm.
just as much as it would help you concentrate on solving, say, a multi-step math problem.
So the core question this study aimed to answer was this. Is the link between reading and math primarily because they rely on some of the same specific skills, or is it more because they both depend on these more general cognitive powerhouses?
That's the crux of it. Specific overlap versus general foundation.
And right off the bat, they found a significant overall connection. A correlation R equals 0.52 between reading and math achievement,
0.52.
which tells us there's definitely a real relationship here. It's not just random.
Indeed. A correlation of 0.52 is, well, it's quite substantial in research terms. It indicates a clear tendency for people who do well in one area to also do well in the other.
Yeah.
It's too strong to be just coincidence.
Okay, so R.52, not a perfect match, obviously, but definitely strong. Something important is happening under the hood. Now, when they started digging into those different theories, the specific skills versus the general abilities, what did they find?
Well, first they looked closely at the relationships between specific reading skills, things like phonological awareness,
Yeah.
manipulating sounds and words,
Right.
or reading comprehension, understanding meaning, and specific math skills like calculation or mathematical problem solving.
Okay.
And what they discovered was that almost all of these individual specific connections were also statistically significant.
Okay, so there are specific links.
Yes, definitely. With correlation coefficients ranging from R.23, so kind of moderate,
Mhm.
up to a quite notable R.61.
Wow, 0.61. That's a pretty strong link for a specific skill pairing. So even when you zoom in, there's still a definite connection. Like maybe being good at understanding what you read directly helps with those math word problems.
Precisely that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The fact these correlations are significant suggests there really are some shared cognitive processes, or maybe knowledge bases, that contribute to performance in specific parts of both reading and math.
Interesting.
You could imagine, perhaps, the basic ability to decode and interpret symbols, whether they're letters forming words or numerals representing quantities, that could be one shared element for certain skill pairs.
Okay, so we see these connections at the specific skill level. But didn't the researchers take it a step further? They looked at how strong these across-domain links were compared to links within reading or within math itself, right?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And what they generally observed was that the correlations within a domain.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, the link between vocabulary and reading comprehension, both reading skills,
Right.
or within math, say, the link between knowing your number facts and doing algebra. Those are often stronger than the correlations between a specific reading skill and a specific math skill.
Okay, hang on. So if I'm following you, my ability to understand a complex text might be more closely tied to how big my vocabulary is than it is tied to how good I am at, say, geometry.
That's a pretty accurate way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
It implies that while there are definitely connections bridging the two domains,
Uh-huh.
the skills within a single domain, like reading, might share an even greater number of underlying cognitive factors among themselves.
But the really big question, the one we started with, is about the main driver of that overall R.52 correlation. Was it just adding up all those smaller overlaps in specific skills, or was it something more fundamental?
And this brings us to the second key part of their meta-analysis. They used a pretty sophisticated statistical technique, meta-analytic structural equation modeling.
Okay, fancy name. What does that do?
Think of it as a way to statistically tease apart how much of that connection between reading and math can be chalked up to these general abilities versus how much is due to those specific shared skills we just talked about.
Got it.
They use this method to examine the influence of what they termed a domain general factor.
Ah, that term again.
Right. And this factor was essentially defined by measures of things like overall intelligence, executive functioning, which covers planning, organizing, managing tasks,
Okay.
working, and short-term memory, and processing speed, those core abilities.
And they basically built a statistical model of these core cognitive abilities and then checked how much that model could explain the relationship we see between reading and math performance.
Exactly. And the results of this analysis were, well, quite revealing.
Okay.
The domain general model explained the majority of the covariance, that's the shared variance between reading and mathematics outcomes.
The majority. So shared variance just means how much reading scores and math scores tend to move together.
Yeah, essentially how much of the variation in reading scores can be explained by the variation in math scores, and vice versa. And this general cognitive factor accounted for most of that shared movement.
So wait, what does this all boil down to then? It sounds like you're saying those fundamental cognitive abilities, the ones that aren't specific to either reading or math, are actually the main reason why these two skills tend to go hand in hand.
That is the central finding, yes. It appears the connection is less about specific overlapping skills, like memorizing word lists being the same kind of task as memorizing multiplication tables,
Right.
and more about having a robust underlying cognitive infrastructure that supports learning and performance in both of these areas.
Huh. Like having a powerful engine in a car, it can power different systems effectively?
That's a great analogy.
Hmm.
A powerful central processing unit in a computer lets you run lots of different programs well. It's similar here.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. So it's not just about shared techniques or specific knowledge bits, but more about the overall processing power of your brain for handling information.
Precisely. While the study did confirm those significant links between specific reading and math skills exist, the influence of this overarching domain general factor emerged as the more significant explanation for that overall correlation we started with.
And didn't they also mention that the correlations between the specific skills tended to be fairly consistent? It wasn't like just one particular reading skill strongly linked to one math skill.
That's an important detail, yes.
Yeah.
It suggests the connection isn't highly specialized. It's more of a generalized trend across various aspects of both reading and mathematics.
So whether they looked at reading fluency or comprehension and basic arithmetic or complex problem solving,
Yeah.
the connections were generally there.
Exactly, reinforcing that idea of a broader underlying factor.
Now, were there any other interesting nuances? Anything else that jumped out?
They did identify a few modest moderating effects, things that slightly changed the strength of the relationship. Like, for instance, they observed that age appeared to play a small role. It suggests the relationship between reading and math might evolve somewhat as individuals go through different developmental stages.
Ah, okay.
But crucially, these moderating effects were generally not very large. The main story held.
Interesting. So the strong underlying link is there across different ages, but maybe looks slightly different in a young child compared to, say, a teenager.
That's a plausible interpretation. Maybe as people gain more specialized knowledge in each area, The direct reliance on those core general abilities shifts a tiny bit, but the study's main conclusion still stands: the substantial influence of those foundational cognitive capacities.
Okay, so let's try to sum this up for everyone listening. The key takeaway here seems to be this massive meta-analysis strongly indicates that the big reason why people who are good readers often tend to be good at math too is largely down to these fundamental cognitive abilities we all have. Things like general intelligence, attention, memory, processing speed.
Exactly. It's like that powerful engine, as you said, driving performance in two different but related areas.
And while there are definitely some specific skills that both reading and math draw on,
Yes, those links are real and significant.
the evidence overwhelmingly points to these domain general abilities providing the essential groundwork for success in both.
That's the core message from the structural equation modeling part.
And interestingly, even though those specific skill links were significant, they were often weaker than the links within reading itself or within math itself.
That's a crucial point, yeah. It highlights that while there's a shared foundation, reading and math also have their own distinct demands and skill sets. They're not the same thing.
Right. And this whole pattern is pretty broad, not just a couple of isolated skill pairings being linked.
Yes, the consistency across different types of reading and math outcomes really reinforces that idea of a more fundamental, generalized factor playing a major role.
And finally, they did note a few smaller factors like age that can slightly tweak this relationship as people develop.
Indeed, it's not entirely static, but the overarching impact of those core cognitive abilities seems to be the dominant factor throughout development.
So that brings us to a really thought-provoking point for you, our listener, to mull over. Given that these fundamental cognitive abilities seem so critical for succeeding in both reading and math, what does that imply for how we approach education
Mm.
and how we support learners? I mean, if someone's struggling in either reading or math or maybe both, should we be focusing more on strategies to maybe strengthen those underlying cognitive muscles, attention, memory, processing speed that power both skills?
It certainly raises a huge question about where the focus of educational interventions should lie, doesn't it?
It does.
Should we primarily hammer away at teaching the specific skills within reading and math? Or should we also perhaps dedicate real attention to nurturing and enhancing these more foundational cognitive abilities that seem to underpin learning right across the board?
Yeah.
The findings of this really comprehensive meta-analysis strongly suggest that the second part, focusing on those general abilities, warrants some serious consideration. It's definitely something to think about.